it's time to start dimensioning. And by dimensioning, we also have to set up the right dimension styles. Now, a quick disclaimer here right in the beginning of this section is that from now on, I'm going to use the local standards, what we use here in Hungary, but I'm aware that in every single country, things are looking differently. So if you're looking for a different style for dimensioning, I'm going to show you where to either choose your localized style or where you can create your own custom dimensions. So again, don't be surprised if you see things on the screen which are not customary in your country. This is what we do here, things here. But if you're looking for something else, you can just easily set up your own set of styles. Now, having cleared that out of the way, let's see how do we set up dimensions, especially when it comes to dimension styles, and how do we tell the software what to dimension and how. So let's select the floor plan first. We start from the ground floor and we want to dimension the whole thing up. Now, before we do, let's investigate where the settings are coming from. So if you go to Dimension and Properties, you can use the length dimensions, and here you can see what kind of dimensions you're going to work with. You can define the layer properties, the text settings, the text properties, dimension text, arrowheads. So if you want to have different ticks at the end, then here you can set that up. Also, you can decide what kind of dimension values you want to work with, which standard you are going to work with, and also the line extensions, all the things that you can set up here. And if you want to store your settings in a different sort of set of styles, then you can do that here. Just create a new style. You can see that there's a bunch of German styles here, which I used to work with. So let's just hit OK, accept this as it is. We are satisfied with these settings. And now it's time to put together our little palette of dimensions. So how do we do that? We go to Dimension, Building, and All Walls, which is the tool actually which dimensions everything for you. You just have to select the whole drawing, hit Enter, and then the dimensions would appear. But for that, you have to first select what you want to dimension. Now up here we have the things which could be measured up. And down here we have the list of things which would be dimensioned. If you click on the dimensions, you see in this preview that this is actually the order in which these dimensions would appear. But I'm not satisfied with this list, so let's just clear it. So you start also with a clean slate. I'm going to show you how to put together a nicely looking dimension list. First thing I want to dimension, and when I say first, I mean that this will be the items which appear in the innermost position. So the first thing, the innermost ones, should be walls with opening axes distances, so this one over here. Let's just hit Add, and the next thing what we are going to dimension up is exterior walls with opening width, which I'm going to add. And let's stop here for a second, because when it comes to openings, we need to know how do we set up how openings are going to be dimensioned. The tool is actually down here. You go door/window detail dimension setting, and here you can set up how things will be dimensioned. And this is one difference what we implement here in Hungary, that we are only dimensioning the width. So if you are looking for a setting in which the width is above and the height is below, or the other way, that's where you can set that up. And at this level, I don't need the seal heights. I'm going to ignore that as well. So just hit OK. So the third thing to dimension would be the interior wall dimensions, which I'm adding right here. And the last thing would be exterior walls corner points, like so. Let's hit Add, let's hit OK. Now the software gives me this orange selection rectangle, which tells me that I need to select something. So I'm going to select the whole drawing minus the slabs, hit Enter, and then the software gives me this orange box, which is showing me where the innermost dimension line would be positioned. So this way you can make sure that you're not going to overlap anything. So I'm just going to move this selection, move this rectangle in a way that it would not overlap any other element, and just click again. And the software rewards me with a bunch of dimensions, which would dimension up the corner points, the inner points of the openings, etc., etc. Now, we do the same exercise on the floor above. So we just go either use the page up, page down keys, or just go with these buttons over here. And I want to again dimension the first floor as well, which I do with the same way. Dimension, building, all walls. The list is fine, so I'm not going to change it, and I just make sure that the windows and doors are dimensioned the same way. Let's hit OK. Select the whole thing again, like so. Hit Enter, move the dimensions in an appropriate place, and then I have everything dimensioned up. minus the doors and windows, which I'm going to do next. When it comes to dimensioning doors and windows, I'm going to do things again, which in a way which might be different than how you would do it, because I know for a fact that in certain countries the door and window width and height would be potentially shown on these dimension levels. But instead we are going to use a different method, and we are going to show the seal height, the width and the height for the elements on the elements. So the way we do it, well, let's first go back to the ground floor, and we are going to start from here. Is that with dimension, building, and door and window dimensioning. So in this case, you can just click on to select all the doors and windows and have that dimensioned up. But before I actually perform that action, I need to tell the software how these dimensions actually look like. So I go back to building, I select, let's say, the doors from the properties, and I need to tell the software on this level how elements will be dimensioned up. So I go to, in the main parameters tab, I go to dimension and consignment. And here I can, this should be familiar because you have seen this dialog before when I set up the wall dimensioning. I see the same dialog, and here I have to set up that I want the doors and windows to be measured, dimensioned as follows. Width above, height below, and I need, well, for the doors I don't need the seal height, so I'm just going to hit this accept. And I do the same thing for the properties, opening, and windows as well. Almost the same thing, dimension consignment, width above, height below, and the seal height is needed. Okay, this is okay. So I'm just going to hit OK and accept it. And in order to dimension everything up, I go back to dimension, building. Let's start with windows, and I hit all. And if I do that, the software dimensions everything up nicely. And let's perform the same action again, building, door, and all of them, and they are again dimensioned just the way they should be. So let's go one floor up and perform the same action. Let's go to building, window, all, and door as well. So now everything is dimensioned up nicely. Now the software automatically generates these tags, these dimensions, of course. Now, it might happen in certain cases that they are not in a very convenient place. Maybe sometimes they overlap. Fortunately, I can't find a situation for that. But you need to know how to actually move this dimension tag, how to maybe flip it from inside to outside. I need to know how do I put this value over here. For that, we have a similar tool under dimensions, buildings, doors. I think this is a window, by the way. No, this is a door, so it should be fine. So we go to door, selection, and all I have to do, I just have to click on the external point or the internal point in order to flip the dimension. So that way I can make sure that the dimension is moved out of the way and it's not going to overlap anything else. So now to sum up, I have a perfectly dimensioned up ground floor and I have a first floor. So dimensioning is almost done. In addition to these aforementioned automated tools, there are some manual ways of dimensioning in case you want to pick something, some precise thing that you haven't dimensioned with the automatic method. You can do it by hand. So for that we have two tools. The first I'm going to show you is under dimension, length, and aligned. So for example, if you want to show on your floor plan the length of this wall, you just have to click on the starting point of your dimension, click on the ending point, and then just move the mouse cursor when you want the dimension to be put. Now, there's a similar tool for that, but that's serving the purpose of doing series of dimensions, like making a dimension chain. And that is called serial in horizontal. Also, there's a one in vertical, but for now we are going to do a horizontal one because I want to dimension the width of this room, this wall thickness, and the width of that room over there. So we go with serial in horizontal, and I click on the starting point of my dimension, let's say here, click on the end point, click for the dimension to be positioned, and then I click for the next dimensioning. Now, if you pick a short distance to be dimensioned, and the software knows that this might be too short for the number to be properly shown because it might overlap with something else, then the software allows you to manually move the value out of the way. And then you can just keep on going and hit the other part, and here you go, you have both rooms actually dimensioned up with the wall thickness nicely and neatly moved out of the way. This way you can manually dimension sections, elevations, detailed drawings, anything where the automated tools could not serve you. One important aspect of dimensions in ARCHLine is that the things that you are dimensioning and the things that they dimension are in a living connection. They live together, they are in a sort of associative relationship, which means that if you change the original item's position, then a dimension would update. And let's illustrate that with this example up here. We are on the first floor, and there's this this tiny window that you can see over there as well. So we have this window, and if you click on it, you see that its current position is now 550 millimeters from this wall corner. And let's assume that you talk to your clients, and for some reason, this window has to be moved a little bit to the corner, maybe to 500 millimeters. Now, if you do that, if you click on this marker and you change the position, we already talked about doors and windows, how to position them, so this should be nothing new to you. If you type in the value of 500, notice how the dimensions down here would update. So let's hit enter, and then I do, the dimensions update as well. So every time you change something to which a dimension is linked, then the dimension lines and values will update. Next topic we have to talk about is how to generate the room and area tags. Now, what these tags do, a couple of things. First of all, they are going to designate where the rooms are, what their roles are. They are going to tell you the surface values and volume values, among other things as well. So what you need to do in all these situations is that you have to tell the software where the rooms are. Now, luckily we have an automated tool for that. Before I show you how that works, let's see how we can have access to the properties for this tool. By the way, it's under building, room and area. Before we do that, let's just go to properties, room and area, and here you can actually see the things based on which this component works. First of all, you can define based on which standard you want to work with. You can also define upper limits and lower limits. If you are working in like a roof space, attic space, you have to define what is the headroom below which you don't count the whole net area. And when you calculate with the percentage of a gross area, this is where you can set that up. We are not doing that now because on the ground floor there's not going to be any use for this. Also, calculated values is where you can predefine how this stamp would look like. Now, by default, it would tell all rooms are living rooms because the software itself is not able to decide for you what the use for this room is going to be. So I'm just going to say this is going to be a room as a generic tag. Later on I can change that, of course, but every time I'm going to place this tag, the software would tell you that this is a room. Now, one other thing you can define is, for example, the covering. So if you want the software to show you the covering for a certain room, then let's just click redraw. Then that kind of tag would be shown as well. So there's a bunch of things you can ask the software to show at this point. I don't need the flooring, by the way. You can decide how the gross and net area would be calculated, but I'm satisfied with now just with the name and the area of the room. So let's just hit OK and start placing these markers. Now, how does that work? We go to room and area, and we use the room by walls tool, which is able to actually recognize the contour. If I move my mouse inside this room, you can see this kind of purplish spider web-like thing, which would tell you that, okay, these are the boundaries, and based on which, if you click, the software would recognize the boundaries and it would give you the area for this room. Let's keep on clicking. For now, everything is just a room, so if you want to rename them, you can just click on them and rename the text here manually. It's going to be a kitchen, and the next one is going to be an office. So let's just click on that and rename it. And if in any case the tag which is generated overlaps something useful information on this floor plan, like right here, this is a bit too crowded, you can just click on the tag, click on the movement marker, and move it someplace more convenient or less intrusive. So here we go. So let's go to this room over here. Again, I need to move this a little bit, and I have to rename this to be a toilet. By the way, if you want to change the font type, you can do that in the settings. I haven't showed you that, but if you want, then this is where you can set up the actual fonts and sizes. So this was just a quick detour. So let's just close this now and go to this room over here, which is going to be, I don't know, a living room. Here we go. Now, this is one way to do things, but as it happens, we have to be a bit more tricky this time, because we want to break this single room, which is almost 60 square meters, into two separate locations. Now, the software is not able to do that by itself because it would recognize the contours. So what's the method for manually designating room shapes? This would come in handy when you have a situation like this one, a room with a double purpose, or maybe you have like an external seating area, like a barbecue pit or something like that. You need to be able to manually track the contour of these elements. So what I do, I'm going to get rid of this stamp over here. Just click on X. And this time I'm going to manually track the shape so that I would have control over where the room ends and where the next one begins. So I go back to room and area, I go to room by polygon, and I'm going to now click on the nodes and manually track the layout of this room. So let's just click, click, click. I think this should go all the way like here. So if you want the room to end somewhere like here, then you need to have some kind of guiding reference lines. And in order to make them appear, just move your mouse cursor to this corner point over here, and then these green guiding lines appear, so you can snap to them like so. Let's keep on moving, and let's move here and hit enter. Now nothing happened because the software is still waiting for one other input. This is the place when you can subtract areas from your area. So you can actually ask the software to maybe if you have like a kitchen island or a column in your room, then you can subtract their area from the total value. I don't have anything like that now, so I'm just going to hit enter. And now the software asks me what the room's internal height is. Now this is important because when you create a room and area based on an automated method, then the software knows that yes, these are the walls and the ceiling is all the way there, so I can calculate the values by myself. But in this case, the software is not able to rely on existing information. So you need to tell the software what is the wall height, which is 2,700 millimeters. Let's just hit OK. And now I have one room over here. It's a bit confusing that it's right in this line, so I'm just going to move it like that. Okay, let's create another one right here. Before I do, let's name this. So this would be like a dining area, and I need to have like a living room over here, which I can create the very same way. I just go to room with polygon, and again I need to snap somewhere there, so I'm just going to move my mouse cursor over here to make these lines appear. So here we go, like so, and I'm just going to go all the way around the building. So let's click all the way there, and here, and hit enter. Again, I can subtract areas from my area. I'm not going to do that. Enter again. The headroom has to be specified, and after putting an enter, would put an end to this operation. Again, I'm going to move this a little bit further away, and this would be like a living room area. So this tool is very handy when you have rooms with multiple purposes. You can manually chop up the space to smaller segments. A logical question at this point is, how do we differentiate between the two rooms visually? Because if I select the room and area tags, I see that this one lasts here and the other one begins there. But if I don't have anything selected, then who's to say where begins what? So there are many ways to solve this issue. One would be is that if you click on any of these elements, you can ask for a background color, so you can actually tell that this room is colored in a different way. But that's not what we are doing now, so we are not going to do any kind of fills. Instead, we are going to ask the software to use some kind of line as a boundary. First we set up the line, and then we ask the software to enable those lines. Let's start with this dining tag. If I go to its properties, then I can just go to profile and area properties, and I can ask the space to be lined with a dashed line. So I'm just going to say a dashed line over here and another dash over there. Okay, I accepted it, but seemingly nothing happened. This is because it's one thing to set up the property, but it's another to ask the software to visualize it. Because of the preset, these lines are not going to be shown by themselves. You have to ask for the lines to be shown. So you click on the tag and you click on this arrow over here. And if you go to edit, you have the ability to ask for the space profile to be shown. So let's do just that. And here we go. Now we have a very thin dashed line to show you the boundary between the dining area and the living room area. So just to sum up, room and area is used for designating the rooms and giving you useful information. And it could be used for a bunch of other things, because if you, for example, do energy calculations, or maybe you have like a lighting plan and you need to know the built-in wattage, then this is what those calculations will be based on. We are going to talk about that later on. The point is that when it comes to rooms and areas, there are two ways to create them, either automatically bounded by walls or by manual means, which is very useful if you have like a dual purpose room, or maybe you have like an area which you want, which is not bound by any walls or any kind of things, maybe only by just reference lines. Let's move on. Staying on the topic of dimensioning, let's investigate the elevation on floor plan tool over here. Now, what this does is that if you click on any of the elements, you are able to display elevation information on that. So with the first click, we clicked on the element, highlighted what we want to dimension, and with another click, we select the face that we want to actually dimension. And then, as a third action, we have to decide if we want to dimension the top or the bottom part of this element. Now, in case of this wall, we need to dimension the bottom part. And having chosen that, the software tells you that the current value is 0 millimeters. You can override that if you want, but here's the automated value. Let's accept that one. And now in this dialog, you can actually see the preview of the elevation symbol. Now, this is the kind of symbol we use here in Hungary, but if you're looking for another one, you can go to replace and find another symbol. So make no mistake, this 6.78 value is just a preview. So this is not the actual dimension value. This is just to show you how the symbol will look like. So let's hit OK and position the symbol right over here. Now, if I want to change anything on this symbol, if I click on it, I see that there's not much to change here. So I can't extend the lines, I can't change the hatch patterns, I can't override the value. This is because this is something that we call a group. A group is a closed circuit of lines, hatch patterns, and values. So by default, these things are not editable, but if you go to the context menu and you say edit group, then you can just click on that, and then everything else will be isolated except for the group itself. So you can just highlight the elements of the group and edit them. Now, for example, if you want to remove some decimals, which I'm not going to do, but if you want to do that, click on the value and you can retype anything you want. And when you are done with editing this group, you can just use the context menu and say that you want to close the group, and that will be it. So this way you can modify these groups, otherwise they will be closed from editing. Now that was one dynamic group. There's another one I want to talk about, and that is in connection with the north symbols. Let's get to know the design center over here. We haven't spent too much time with this yet, but it's time to get to know it. So if you click on group, which is under building section, then you can just find all kinds of categories here, and I'm looking for the signs container. And here, if I click on North English, then I see all kinds of North symbols. Find the one that you need. Again, every region requires a different one, so I'm just going to use a very generic one, maybe the one with the letter N and the arrow. Click on it, drag and drop it onto the floor plan, and let it go. Let's say here. Now, a peculiar thing about the north symbol is that it's already oriented. Now, the reason why is that so, and it's not facing upwards, is because previously I have defined, if you remember a couple of lessons ago, I defined the north direction like so. So if you predefine the north direction with any kind of values, then the north symbol would actually take up that orientation. There are two things I want to amend on this symbol. One is the color, the other one is the size. Let's start with color. Now, if I click on this item, I see that funny thing is that this symbol is stored on the group layer, and the layers color is black. So how come this symbol is not black, but it has this kind of yellowish greenish color? Now this is because the group itself has a predefined color, which is green, which overrides the layer's color setting. But if you want to force this symbol to adopt the setting of the layer, then you just click on the item and you say that you want to force the color of the layer, and that would make the symbol black. So another thing we want to predefine or change is the size, because this symbol I think is way too big for our purposes. There are two ways to do it. One way to do it is before you place the item. So you just double click on it and you can just change the size or the aspect ratio or the ratio like so. Or if you have already placed the symbol, you can just go to these settings and you can give it another size. Let's make it into 2 meters, like so. I think this is a bit more manageable now. So if you want to change the sizes, again, 2 places to go to. One is before you place the item, the other way is after you have placed it. Now that's all about groups, and now, well, there's one other group I want to talk about, and that is just a plain symbol. Let's say it's an arrow which would define where the entrance is. Now let's go back to signs and let's look for arrows. You can type in the keywords here, or you can just go to the arrow container and find something here. Let's say I want to designate where the entrance is. All I need to do, I click on the group, drag and drop it onto the floor plan and release it where I want it to be. So this way you can use 2 kinds of blocks. One are dynamic, which are adopting some kind of predefined value, elevation or north direction, or you have these non-dynamic groups which you can just drag, drop onto the floor plan. If you want to rotate them, you can just click on them and do it like this with these markers. I'm not going to rotate that because here it would make no sense, but we are going to talk about groups a bit later on. Let's move on. Let's add some annotations and some markers to this floor plan. First, starting with text. The way it works is that you go to drafting, the text menu, but before you actually place anything, let's just go where the properties are. So we go to properties, text, and here you can define the text size, the color, and if you have any kind of formatting, maybe you want to make it bold, you can define that here. But let's just hit accept, let's hit OK, and instead of predefining the values, we are placing the text, and later on, if we want, we can change that. So we go to text, and here we have to define what the text would be. In our case, let's make it into a marker for this is a ground floor, and once I have typed in the value, I can just decide where I want this text to be. Let's position it here. The software allows continuous placement, so if you want to keep on adding the same tag, you can do that. I'm just going to terminate this action now. But before I do, let me just call your attention to this fact over here that you can find another text styles from this predefined list. You can also make your own styles if you want. So let's hit cancel and see what we can do with this text. For example, it's too small for my taste, so let's just hit click it. And when I do, I have 2 things what I can do, 2 main things in addition to accessing the properties. One is that you can retype the value what you have defined, and also you can just click on this size marker over here and change the size to something else. Let's say I want to change it to 500 millimeters, like so. Hit enter. Now if you want to reposition a text, you have to select it and go to the movement markers and move it anywhere you want. Okay, this was just a plain text. This doesn't refer to anything in particular, only that it's a text by itself. But what happens if you want to identify elements on your floor plan? You want to designate that this particular thing over here is a reinforced concrete column. So how do you add the marker to that? Now for this we have a tool which is called the text with a pointer. Now when you select that, you have many styles you can work with. I'm using now the label dimension style, and here you can add the value to it. So the text should be reinforced concrete column. Hit OK. Now, first thing you have to do, click on the item which you want to attach the label to, like so, and then position the text itself, like so. Maybe it should be good, like here. And also you can add breaking points to this pointer, like so, and so, and hit enter, and then the column marker is there. So we have one identifier here. But I want to use the same identifier in other positions as well, so I'm just going to select it, and I just want to move a copy from this part over here and move it here and also there. So this way you can add this kind of markers and copy them, move them anywhere that you want, and this way you can refer back to original items and identify them with some text labels. we did talk about dimensioning, but we haven't discussed how to dimension elevation and sections. So let's start with elevations. Let's click on this west elevation over here and put that into focus. What we need to do is dimensions and some elevation markers. So what we do is that first let's start with dimensions. We want to dimension two things. The sort of like following the shape of the building, the breaks in the elevation, like this line and that line and etc. And also where the openings are. For this purpose, we can use the Dimension Series in Horizontal tool. Just a quick recap, if you want to predefine how the dimension looks like in terms of its style, you can do that in Properties, and you can just go to Length Dimension. Here you can define all kinds of things you need, but that was just a refresher. So let's see how do we dimension up the elevation. We go to Series in Horizontal. We are going to have two dimension lines. The one closer to the drawing would contain the elevation like breaks and also the opening positions. And on the external elevation, external dimension, we would have just the bigger dimensions for where the elevation is changing shape. So what we do is that we click on the starting point of the dimension and click on the, well, let's say on the first opening. And then we just position the dimension line where you want, like so. And from then on, you don't have to think about positioning. You just have to click on the element you want to dimension. And you don't even have to be like orthogonal. You just click on the part where the snap takes you. And that way you can quickly dimension up everything on this floor plan, like here and there. Now, okay, I have one set of dimensions here, which contains where the openings are. But I need to have another one which dimensions up the major breaks in the elevation. So let's just hit like so and here. And now I can define where the dimension line is. Let's say it's here. And now let's click on the two remaining points here and there. All right, this is fine. This is good, but we need to have the same thing in this vertical direction, because I want to dimension up how the elevation, the facade looks like. So what we do, we use a different tool. It's called elevation on section, and the methodology is a bit similar. You first have to define the starting point of your elevation, which should be here, and also you want to move the cursor where the elevation dimension would be positioned. So let's say it's here, and from then on it's rinse and repeat. You just have to click on the elements that you want to dimension. So first I need to know the height of this opening, and then I need the height of this this kind of roof, and then the next level over here. Now if your dimension is a bit closer to the others, you have the ability to offset it a bit, but I'm just going to keep it as it is. And then just keep on proceeding with all the dimensions. I'm zooming in to make sure that I find the right points, but you don't have to zoom in that far. So let's click on all the elements that you want to dimension. Let's finish with this one. You can have more, of course, if you want, but for my purposes, this is just enough. So we terminate the action with escape, and we add a text, which we already know where it is. We go to drafting and we click on text. And notice how the software remembers that the last thing I wrote in was reinforced concrete column, but this time I'm going to add another marker, which would be west elevation, and hit OK, and position the text somewhere. Let's say here. If you feel that the text is too small, we already know what to do. We just click on the text and boost up the size a little bit and move it wherever we want. So this is how it works. And now let's talk about these kind of markers, because the whole reason why we have a texture like a colored elevation is because we want to show the materials on the elevation. But how can we even identify what the materials are? Now for this, we would like to use some signs. So we go back to the design center and we go with groups. And here under signs, there are, well, you don't have to use the same things as I use, but this is just the concept itself. This whole thing is arbitrary. You could go into more details if you want, but this is just the way we would like to work. So we go to square signs, and we are going to use this kind of signs. We could use numbers, we could use letters to act as like a material legend. So let's start with the roof itself. So we are going to drag and drop this marker over here. And we can say that, for example, the roof is going to have a certain texture. And then the next texture we are going to signify or designate would be the wall's external covering. And then the third one should be this glass surface. And the fourth one would be the reinforced concrete external cladding, which is here, and also there's another copy over there. So later on, when we are documenting, we can use these markers to sort of act as like a material legend, and that would look very nice on the plot layouts. For the sake of practice, we are doing the same thing again, but this time with the south elevation. So let's click the south elevation and magnify it. Now, in any case, if you don't see the very same things as I see, mainly maybe you missing the shadows. Now, this happens sometimes when you are rebuilding the 3D and the software tries to conserve computing power, so it turns off the shadows temporarily. So if you want to turn the shadows back on, all you have to do is just click on this marker over here and ask the elevation shadows to be recalculated. But that's just an off topic for you to know how to get the same result as I have here. So we are going to start with horizontal dimensions, then vertical ones, and some texts. So we go with the serial in horizontal, and all we have to do, we just have to click on the nodes that we want to dimension, like so. So first we are dimensioning up the width of the windows and their positions, of course. And well, I think the next thing we have to dimension actually is where the elevation breaks. So when you dimension something which is very close to other things, then the software won't place the dimension automatically, but it allows you to sort of like position it manually. So let me just offset it a bit, and then I can just proceed. Now I'm in a bit of a trouble here because the column is blocking my view. I can't dimension the position of this window. Luckily everything is the same on the first floor, so I can just click there and get the dimensions from there. So let's just click, and this time I'm going to go on with the door and also with the elevation itself. So first dimension line is done. Let's terminate the action now either with the escape button or with the right click, and do the same thing again with the overall dimensions of the elevation. So let's click on one of the corner points, and I think this should be where the elevation breaks. Let's offset the dimension and keep on clicking until I have everything I need. Now so far so good. This time I need the vertical elevation, so that I can get by clicking on the elevation on section. And what I do, I click on what I want to dimension and I offset the dimension line to where I need it. And then I just keep on dimensioning the things. Let's say I need to have the dimension of the height of this window over here, maybe the position of this balcony, which also coincides with where the ground floor starts. Also, let's position that one, maybe where the roof begins, and also the topmost point, this one. Again, you can have more if you want, but for the sake of example, this is plenty. Text is something we haven't added, so let's just terminate the tool with the right click or with the escape, and then go to drafting, text, and let's name this south elevation is its name, so let's name it and hit OK and position the text. Text is a bit too small, so if I click on it, I can magnify it, boost up the size to 500, and again I can just position it any way you want. So this is just a repetition, like sort of a refresher to show you how you can dimension things up on an elevation. And again, reminder, don't forget that things that we have worked on so far are still the original items from the 3D model, which would come very handy later on when we are making some changes on the model and the floor plan. Having dimensioned and labeled all the elevations, let's look at now the sections, which we have one section over here, so let's click on it and activate it. The procedure will be a bit similar with some minor differences. There's a couple of things you want to dimension, for example, the internal position of the walls and their thickness values, so we do that with serial in horizontal. And all I do, I click on the points that I want to dimension. I can either offset the dimension line or just keep it as it is, and keep on clicking until I find the right things to dimension. For example, this wall over here and the thickness value over there, which would be here. Here we go. And also the thickness of this wall and that one, and maybe the overhang here. Now, Having done that, let's do the same thing on the ground floor. I terminate the section with the right click or the escape button, and do the same thing again, this time with on the ground floor. So we start with the wall thickness, the position, thickness value again, and also this wall over here, and thickness, which again you can offset if you want, or you can just snap it back to where you want it to go, and the wall's position and the thickness value again, which should be somewhere here. All right, now once we have done that, of course we haven't created any vertical dimensioning, and of course you can use the elevation on section, but we have a different tool to mark the internal height values of the rooms, for example. We have a tool called serial in vertical, and that would be the thing to use in order to designate the thickness values of horizontal elements, for example this slab over here, and the walls room's headroom, and also let's just put this here, and also the headroom again, and the thickness of this slab over here. So again, this is what you should be using if you have like internal dimensions which you want to dimension vertically. But don't forget our good old friend, which is the section on elevation, or elevation on section, sorry. And that will be used to dimension the things as we did before on the elevation itself. So what we need to have is the 0 point, and then we use the height of the door, the bottom point of the slab, maybe the top point as well. Maybe you want to get the sill height for this window. For this we have to zoom in to find the right node, and then we go to the height of the window, and where the attic slab starts and where it finishes. Mind you, everything is created as I'm clicking. I'm not zooming out, so that way I can see better what I'm actually working on. And also I think what I need is this topmost point, and that would give me all the vertical dimensions as I need them. Now another thing which is missing is some kind of two things, the text and some labels. Now let's start with the text. If I go to drafting and I click on this text value over here, I can type in what the name should be for this drawing, which I know is a section, let's say 01, and hit OK and position it as it is. Again, this might be a bit small, so I just click on it and boost up the size and snap this back where it should be. Let's just do it like so. And let's use some markers. We are going to use similar markers as we used before, but this time they are not going to be used for material legend because there are no materials, but I have some multi-layer structures over here and there, so I need to get some kind of sign based on which I can identify later the layer structure. So I can find that under signs, and if I go to circle signs, I have this kind of nice pointers like this one. So I'm just going to add a few. For example, the first layer structure would be the roof's structure, which I haven't defined yet, but later on I have to do that as well. The second one would be the attic slab, which is over here, and then the next point of interest would be this slab over here. And let's do a fourth one, which should be the bottom slab over there. So let's do it like so. Again, if you have the same structure, for example here, you can just go back to the third one, for example, and designate it here. If you want to snap to the original version, then you can just hover the mouse over there and just snap it as it is. And this way you have a nicely dimensioned and labeled section, which should be all part of your wonderful documentation. We are now going to ask the software to write out predefined elements on the screen, because so far we have been filling up the plan with information. There are tools which are able to gather that information pieces and show it to us. So the example that we are going to look at would be something that we call tags and also schedules. So if I zoom in, we want to make the software show more information about this ramp. We already know the base elevation and the upper level of this ramp, and we also know the inclination. So all these values are predefined in this ramp. We predefined it, but now we want the software to actually show these elements to us. Now what we do is that we are going to create here like a field of data which would show more information about this particular item. First, we need to show the inclination. We are going to do that by hand. So we click on the line tool and we are using a simple line with an arrowhead. And all we need to do is just click and show where the ramp is going, well, which direction it's going to incline to. And then we are going to use a tool which we call a tag, which would gather all the information held in the ramp and show it to us. Now, before I actually define the tag, let's talk about where it gets its information bits from, because it has all kinds of formatting, and that formatting is actually stored on the text level. So if you want to fine tune and define how the tag would look like, you can first define the text values. In our case, what this means is that we are going to decrease the size of the letters to 100 millimeters. You are going to see later on why that's relevant. So let's go back to documentation and click on tags. Now, before we place the tags, we have to create them. We have to predefine them. So let's click on this menu and see what we have here. So first of all, we have a bunch of information. Let's first see that here you can choose a discipline. At this point, we are interested in architectural elements and not interior or MEP parts. And when you have that, you can decide which type of element you want to create the tag for. In our case, that will be a ramp. And once we have that, you have a list over here which shows you what kind of element, what kind of information bits the software would list to you. Now, here you can decide if you want to keep any of the data fields or add some more. So first, let's disable those which we don't need. We don't need the ID for sure. We don't need the floor. We know where the slab is. The ramp is. We don't need the style, the name. Elevation is fine. We are going to keep it with, we have already dimensioned that, so we don't need that. And inclination is something that we need. Now, this is all fine, but the thing that we are missing is the upper level elevation, which is not on this list. But if I click on here, I can add it to the list. Now the upper level inclination is put as the last item on the list, and I want to move it upwards. So I want the list to go like this. First, I want the base elevation listed, and then the inclination, then the upper level elevation and the inclination. So I need to click on upper level inclination and move upwards to make sure that it comes before the other values. So let's just do it like this. All right, so now the list is complete. So what I need to do is I need to add some prefixes because the software would not show the parameter name. So I need to tell the software that, okay, if you show this parameter the value, you have to add some kind of prefix. And the elevation, for example, we can name this to be the bottom elevation, and this would be upper elevation, and the inclination would be inclination, like so. So let's hit apply and OK. And now the menu closed, but the thing is that if you go back to tags and if you want to place a tag, the software has remembered your settings. So all you have to do, you just hit OK, and now you can predefine the style for the cells, all kinds of things. We are not doing that now, but here you can actually change the style for the tag. And let's just hit OK. And now the software asks you, all right, choose the item which you want to attach the tag to, which in our case is the ramp. So let's just click on the ramp and then move the table somewhere convenient. So here we go. So now the text field is here, and if I don't need the leader line, I can just click on it and delete it. This would not destroy my tag. Now the fine thing about these tags is that if you do any kind of modification later on this floor plan or on this model, then the tags would update and show you every time the relevant information about this particular item. We just showed you how to create information bits extractions from certain elements, and that was this thing what we did with this ramp. We showed the bottom elevation, upper elevation, and the inclination, and these are data that you didn't type in. They were extracted from the item itself. Now, that was done using the tags, but there's another way of extracting information in bulk, and for that we have the tool which we call a schedule. The method is the same, but this time we are going to work with more than one item. So what we are going to get information about is first the windows and then the doors. Let's ask the software to list all my windows on this floor plan. So what we do, we go to schedule and we go to placing schedule. And when I click that, the software asks you, okay, what kind of discipline you are working on? It's going to be kept as architectural, and then I have to decide if I want to have a window schedule or anything else. And then I have a list of items I can list, and I can enable or disable the visibility of these items from the list. And eventually I can even save this preference into a list. But for now, I'm just going to hit OK and ask the software to list all the items. Now, in this dialog, there's a couple of important things you can set up. First, if you want to have all the floors to be taken into account when you are gathering the items, for now we are going to just gather information from the ground floor. And another important thing is grouping. If you have similar or identical instances, they are not going to be listed as individuals, they are going to be grouped together. If you're looking for like an individual list, then you make sure that you uncheck this box. Now you can add a header, footer. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to hit OK and ask the software to position and place my schedule as such. Now you might notice that the list is very short because even though I have 8 windows, they are the same, so they are grouped together. And I have the sizes, the overall dimensions, the name of the model, and also a preview, like an image to show me how this item looks like with the general dimensions and seal heights and the position of the item. So if I click on this list, I see that actually all the information I need is here, but things are grouped together. That's very important. You can do things either grouped or ungrouped. Now, what happens if I want to do the same thing with doors? Now, the thing is that if I go to schedule and I want to place a schedule and I go with a door schedule, I can choose what I want to show or hide, but there's one important data missing from here, this list, which were here at the windows, and that is the image with dimensions, this thing over here. So if I want my doors to have the same kind of data field, then I have to modify this predefined schedule and ask the software to include that. And this is a very good pretext to show you how to create your own schedule. So let's hit cancel first and go back to schedule and say I want to define a schedule. Again, I choose a discipline, which is architecture, and I go to the door schedules. And when I'm in this container, I see that these are the current values I can list. And if I want to add additional parameters to this list, then I can do it from this jump list here. Actually, there are many different lists from which you can get even BIM parameters, but for now we are going to go with general properties, and the value I'm looking for is called image with dimensions. Let's add that to the list, and I think let's just go back here. I have the image here, and I think that was the second from the beginning, so I'm just going to move this up and up. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's organize it in the same fashion. So in the first, there's going to be an instance ID, which should go up. So that way I can make sure that the instance is the first one. There should be a quantity. That should be the second one. Then I have the dimensions, and that will be over here. And then the floor comes all the way here. I should have the area as such. The name I think is fine. Image. And here we go. So I don't need the seal height because this is a door. So I'm just going to hit apply. Okay, and this time it's about to gather all the doors for me. So I go with a schedule and I say place schedule, and I'm going to use the one which I just defined. Hit OK. And again, I can group or ungroup the elements. I'm going to keep them as grouped, but this time it's going to be all floors. So all the items will be put into this list. Let's just hit OK. And this time the list is going to be quite longer. So let's position it as such. Now, at the first glance, this looks the same way as my window schedules. But there's one vital difference. If you look for any of the elements which are individuals, maybe you have not two but only one of them. If you click on this list, you see that there's this magnifying glasses, and what they do is that if you click on it, they refer back to the original model. And let's illustrate that with let's say the entrance door. If I click on the magnifying glass, the schedule actually tells me where the original instance is. Now, this is good because you have many items on this list. How would you know where the original item is? You can do it like this way. So if you click on the magnifying glass, it shows you where the original item is. And also, don't forget that if you do any kind of change on the floor plan, if at any point the size or any other property of these elements change, which are otherwise listed here, then these properties would be updated. What happens if you want to make like an offline copy of schedules? Maybe you are done with creating your floor plan and modeling, and there's no chance of these items ever changing again. So you want to make like an offline version, like a table text out of these schedules. You can do that by right-clicking on these elements and say that you want to save them into an Excel. And speaking of Excel, there's a different item in our software which is able to give you quantity takeoffs. So if you want to create like a takeoff of bill of materials of everything what you have created so far, then you can just go with an Excel list and make a building calculation. Now, when you are making a building calculation into a table text, there's an option to enable or disable the export of BIM parameters. Now, I haven't talked about this yet, but I think it's an important topic, so let's ponder over this for a second. Now, if you have this enabled, all kinds of parameters would export. Question is, where are these parameters stored and where are they coming from? Let's just hit cancel for a second. If I click on any of the elements on my floor plan or in 3D, for example, this wall over here, I see that there's an option where I can edit, access and modify and add additional BIM elements too. So whenever you have an item, any kind of item, doors, windows, objects, roof layers, etc., then this is where you can add information bits, additional data fields, which would be the building block of building information modeling. And later on, when you're making an export, either into IFC or into an Excel, these information bits would be retrievable. That's just a short, detour. But if you want to ever work in BIM, then you need to know that the basic building block is information, and this is where they are stored in ARCHLine. It might happen that your building project consists of elements which should be demolished, and you want to show multiple instances of the same floor plan with things which would be demolished and built later on. Of course, you can go around and select elements and delete them, but that would be a destructive way of modeling and you would have no original plan to refer back to. Now, luckily in our software there's a tool for this kind of change tracking, and that is called phases. Now, it's under the edit menu, by the way. What we're looking to do is that in our project we decided that these two rooms, the kitchen and the office, should be turned into one single room, which means that we have to delete the wall and this door over here. So how do we mark these elements to be demolished? We go to the phases menu and we go to change to demolish and simply just select the item that you want to discard. And when I think about it, when I delete this wall, then the dimensions are not relevant anymore, and neither are the room and area stems, and let's not forget about the doors. So select everything and hit enter. Software thinks for a second. Seemingly nothing changed, but this is when the phase filters come into the picture, which are up here. So here you can define what you want to see. Let's go with the existing plan. This is actually where we start. All the walls are there, room and area are there as well, and all the dimensions are still intact. But if I go to the third option, demolition plan, then I see that all the elements which I have marked to be discarded, they would be marked with a red coloring, graphical override. This is something you can define, by the way. And if I go to the last option, new construction plan, then I can see how my project would look like once the work is done, once things are demolished, and once the opening is rebuilt. Now, this way you can toggle back and forth what you want to show and how. And one good advantage of this method is that when it comes to printing, you can toggle which version of your plan you want to show. So this is what phases are good for. Let's now go back to the existing plan, and this way you can toggle back and forth what you want to see.